Hello, and welcome to the Piano Lessons for Parents podcast, the practice edition. My name is Dr. N. Mason Conklin, and I'm here to help you help your child succeed at the piano. In just a few minutes a week, you can learn the basic musical concepts that will help you supervise and evaluate your child's practice time at home, and learn some tricks and tips to help your child make the most of their at-home practice time. On Wednesday, we talk about the most effective practice habits and strategies, and today's Wednesday, so let's get started. One of the most frequent questions I get from parents about piano lessons is, how much should my child be practicing? You'll have to forgive me if I'm a little coy when I say, well, that depends. Here's the deal. If I say that your kid needs to practice 30 minutes a day, that might be too much or it might be too little. See, beginners, that's probably a little too much, and for more advanced students, it's probably not nearly enough. The best way to tackle the amount of time a child needs to practice is to shift from a time-oriented practice guideline to a task-oriented practice guideline. And let's look at the way that those are a little different. So, time-oriented practice. That's when you specify an amount of time that they need to practice every day. So little Johnny needs to practice 25 minutes every day. Another way you can do that is to say, well, let's set a goal for the amount of time per week that we practice. So little Susie needs to have amassed 5 hours of piano practice in a week. What that does, though, is it generally encourages what I call the egg timer approach. That's the old approach where parents get the egg timer out of the kitchen drawer and they set it for 30 minutes, put it on the piano, and the kid practices until it dings. Well, I'm not so sure I like that method the best, for a couple of reasons. For one, it creates kind of a clock watcher sort of mentality. So the kid's playing, and he looks up at the clock. Oh, it's only been 3 minutes. He's playing, he looks up at the clock. Oh, it's only been 5 minutes. See, what that does is the clock becomes a distraction. And not only that, but time seems to drag. The clock is just not moving fast enough. And when time drags, the piano starts to feel like a chore, and that's something that we want to avoid. Another thing I don't like about the egg timer approach is that it can interrupt a very effective practice session. Let's say your kid finally gets into it, they're working hard on something, and they're just about to come to a breakthrough in some passage that they're working on, or they decide that they want to play the whole song, and right in the middle of their most effective time, ding, and your kid is off the bench and in front of the PlayStation before you can say boo. So it's just kind of an artificial thing that takes someone out of whatever level of focus and concentration they may have managed to get into, even despite the clock watching phenomenon. The other problem with the egg timer approach is that students with a higher aptitude, they tend to pick up things faster, and so they'll get through their assignments a little bit quicker at the piano. And if they're still sitting there 10, 15 minutes after they feel like they've mastered it, they can get bored in the early stages. And the other is correct too. A student with a little bit lower aptitude who needs maybe some more time at the piano to conquer whatever assignment it is that they've been given, well, if they just practice to that time moment and they haven't really addressed the issues that they need to develop or gain that coordination necessary for a certain passage, then they're not really developing the necessary mastery of concepts in between the lesson times. So that's being a time-oriented practice keeper. If you're a task-oriented practicer, then each practice session has a specific goal. When the goal is complete, you're done practicing. And what that does is it builds concentration and focus. So, if little Johnny really wants to get to his PlayStation game to finish up that game that he's been working on, but he has to practice his piano first, if he knows I got to work on piece number 1 and get the first 3 lines good, I got to work on my scale and make sure I get the fingering correct 4 times, I have to do this and this. If he knows he only has to get 4 things done, he's going to sit down and he's going to concentrate, and he's going to work at those things, and when they're done, he can say, all right, I'm done, I can go play. But it also creates a situation in which time can fly. It's amazing. When you get into something and you're focused on it, and the challenge is sufficient to make you feel like you're really having to work hard and to stay in control, and you can tell when you're doing it right and you can tell when you're doing it wrong, you look up at the clock and, oh my goodness, I've been here for 45 minutes. What have I been doing? It's a state that the psychological educational philosopher Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls being in flow. You get to a point where time just becomes so meaningless. You're so absorbed in the task that you're trying to accomplish that you forget about time. Second, when you conquer a goal, that causes some really good feelings inside. You have a great feeling of accomplishment. I set to do this in this amount of time, and I've done it. I've set myself to learn this amount of music, and I finished it. I am good. I know what I'm doing, and I am effective. And when you feel accomplishment, it also provides motivation to continue practice even after the day's tasks are done. When you feel that sense of accomplishment and it becomes a reward, then sometimes maybe you don't just limit yourself to the 2 or 3 goals that you've set for that day, and you say, oh, I just got done with the section 3, and that section 4, ooh, that looks really cool. I think I'm going to go after it. And so it's a win-win. You feel good about practicing, and you feel motivated to continue practicing. So, what are the things that you can do to help your student maintain a task-oriented attitude when it comes to practice time? One of the best things you can do is to read the assignment sheet and make sure that your child practices each item. Most piano teachers keep an assignment sheet or something that the kids can refer to so that they know what it is they're supposed to be working on through the week. And as a piano teacher of some time, I can tell you, kids never read the assignment sheet. You can't imagine all of the tricks that we go through to try and get them to look at the darn assignment sheet. I've resorted to hiding little, I call them Easter eggs in the assignment sheet. When you read this line, draw a frowny face under a triangle so I know you've read your assignment sheet. Week after week after week, they haven't drawn the smiley face or the upside down frowny face under the triangle. They just simply don't read it. This is a case where you as the parent need to be the enforcer and say, well, let's check the assignment sheet and see what it is you're supposed to be working on. Let me show you what our assignment sheet looks like that we hand out to our kids in our after-school program group classes. Okay, so here it is. This is the title of our introductory 3-week session, Will I Like Piano? This is the assignment for what they need to have accomplished by the time they get to lesson 2. So, number 1, get out your CD, listen to tracks 1, 2, 3, clap along, play along with the beat using the black keys. This is basically the first piano lesson, so it's not a whole lot of really technical stuff. But you can see we give them a specific thing to do. Listen to your CD, clap along with the beat, and then play along with the beat using black keys, especially for page 4. Second assignment, page 6, color the hands. This is kind of a theory assignment because they need to know their finger numbers. So they're working on coloring finger number 1 red, number 2 blue, number 3 yellow, number 4 green, number 5 purple. Assignment number 3, page 8 and 9, climbing up and climbing down. Watch the note stems to tell when to play the right hand and the left hand. So we've given them the assignment, what song it is that they're supposed to learn, and we've reminded them what it is they're supposed to look at to know how to play the piece. If the note stem goes up, it's a right-hand note. If the note stem goes down, it's a left-hand note. So this is a handy reminder in case they get confused as to how to play the piece. 4, make up your own song on the 2 black keys. Use your improvisation cards. We printed out some cards that had different stemmed notes, and they can rearrange those cards and come up with a piece that they like to play. Experiment with low and high sounds in your own song. So you can see we have some specific stuff that you can do every day. You can listen to your CD every day. We have some things that maybe you get done on one day and you don't need to come back to, like this page 6, color the hands. Page 8 and 9, a specific piece that we want you to practice to make sure that you've learned it by the time we see you the next time. And we try to make sure that we always include some kind of improvisation or creative activity to take up that time that students might need after they've done their other pieces and they just like the piano and they want to keep doing stuff. We give some kind of open-ended assignments that they can work on and fiddle with at the piano. A practice log. Your teacher may or may not provide a practice log. Again, this is kind of our way just to kind of keep tabs on when and how much each student practices. So we have them draw a note for every day you practice. So we know whenever they come back, if they have a note here and a note here and a note here and a note here, we know at least that they've read the assignment sheet because it said to draw a note. That's kind of the Easter egg I was talking about. We also add some notes from lesson 1. These are just ideas for really more for the parent to consider. This is kind of our way to communicate with you since we don't get to see you at every lesson. So it's important to practice 5 days a week. Sure. Even if it's only 10 minutes a day. We'll talk more about consistency in a future podcast. Since we have very beginning students, some of them don't have keyboards yet. They're kind of testing this out. So we say that not having a keyboard is not an excuse not to practice. You can still manipulate your hands on a tabletop and get used to the coordination it takes later on. Of course, you're going to have a keyboard. And we have a little announcement here for parents about our open class where they can come in and watch what it is that we do. So this is an example of our assignment sheet, the kinds of things that you can read and make sure that when it's time to sit down and practice, you can say, well, okay, let's get out the CD and listen to these tracks. We've done it. Task number 1 completed. Task number 2, color the hands. Oh, we did that yesterday. We don't have to do that again. But let's look at it. Do you remember what finger number 2 is? Yay, good for you. Task number 3, the climbing up and climbing down. Now this is where maybe the task for them is just to make sure that they're setting up correctly on the 2 black keys, that they're using the correct hand, and they're using a steady beat. It's a little piece for them to play. And then task number 4, have some fun at the piano, create something on your own. You can use our cards that we've supplied. So this is a little bit more open-ended. Go ahead and close that out. So read the assignment sheet. For the earliest beginners, playing through each item on an assignment sheet maybe 2 to 3 times per practice session is probably works as a daily goal. As they get older and as the pieces get more sophisticated, you might want to switch the task from the whole piece to a part of the piece. Longer pieces or assignments should be segmented and conquered individually. So instead of looking at a 2-page piece and saying I have to play all this today, you look at it and you make sections out of it. And then your task for the day is to learn a certain section. So every practice session you learn 1 or 2 new sections. In subsequent practice sections, you need to be learning new sections and also reviewing the old sections that you just learned. And also I think it's important that to be done with every section at least 2 days prior to the next piano lesson. That gives your kid a couple of days to work on that piece as a whole now that they've conquered the individual sections on it. So an example, let's say you have a large section, a large piece, and it divides into 6 sections. And let's say you're practicing about 5 times a week. So if we want to get done with at least the whole thing done with 2 practice sections left, that means 6 sections in 3 sessions. Well, you could do 2 sections every time you practice. So you come in, you learn section 1 and 2 on the first day. On the second day, you come in and you learn section 3 and 4, and then you go back and review sections 1 and 2. On the next day, you come back and you learn sections 5 and 6, and you review 1 through 4. Then you have 2 practice days just to work on the piece as a whole. Maybe section number 5 is a little bit harder, and so you work on that a little bit more. And then maybe you work on section 5 and 6 because it's the part that you've learned, it's the newest in your repertoire. You learned it last, and so it hasn't had as much repetition. So maybe you tackle them a couple of times, and then you work on the piece as a whole. So that's it. Task-oriented practice. Set a goal for the practice and go about accomplishing those goals. 2, read the assignment sheet. Make sure your student is on task, at least fulfilling the assignments that your teacher has asked of them. That's it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. On Monday, we will talk about quarter and half notes and learning the basics of the keyboard. And then next Wednesday, I'll give you the most important thing that you will ever learn about practicing. See you then.